What's in a name, you may ask? It's an identifier. It's an identity in some cases. And of course, some names are good, some not so good, and some are downright awful, which brings us to the topic of today's Top 10 Countdown list. Of course, it's Monday here on the channel, and of course that means it's Countdown Day here on the channel. And the topic this time around, as voted on by fans all across social media, is the top 10 worst Transformers names, and there were a lot of them. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you're at it, loud of my baby, hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links, all of that, man, in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. You can do that at any time, baby. And like I said, the topic this time around is going to be names. Now, fans voted wildly for this one. I wouldn't say it was the most votes that we've ever had, but it was the most widespread votes, possibly, that we've ever had. It was very all over the map. We have a substantial amount of honorable mentions, which honestly could almost be a list unto itself. What I will say is that all of the honorable mentions, and there are 9, all had the exact same number of votes, and honestly, all of them came quite close to ranking in the number 10 spot. There was only a difference of a couple of votes between the honorable mentions and the number 10 rank. So without further ado, let's kind of get into the honorable mentions. Some of these I don't know. I'm not going to lie. Some of these I don't know. The very first one is Hot Rod. A lot of people said, like, they get it. It's the type of car. But, I mean, there's also another connotation that could go with that they said was, you know, a little bit inappropriate. Drill Nuts is another example. Blot. Blot being a very nondescript, non-anything type of name. It's just Blot. Huffer, again because of certain connotations with the use of substances. DK Guard, I think we all know that, though it's a reference to Diaclone, that calling that thing Guard was just a bad idea. Honestly, yeah, I think you should have slapped maybe a silver face and a Shattered Glass Autobot logo and called it, you know, Shattered Glass Ironhide myself. Thrust, Spastic, which I think was a Power Core combiner. Spastic? I'm not sure. Spastic, I guess. Power Core combiner, I think. Skids, Wing Finger. I was surprised about that one a little bit, but it is kind of a dumb name. Let's be realistic. And I love this one from Beast Wars 2, I think. It might have been Neo. Power Hug, which is, if I'm not mistaken, kind of a like a remold of Retrax, I think. So yeah, Power Hug. There you go. So that's the honorable mentions. Everything from, you know, Beast Wars to G1 to some Unicron trilogy in there, to Diaclone. So this list is a little bit all over the map. None of them made the final list. So who did? Well, you know what we're gonna do, baby. We're gonna kick things off with number 10 up first. Coming in at number 10 is one that, ironically, had a lot of Canadian voters, and it's this guy. Yeah, it's Hosehead. Now, not everybody that voted for him was from Canada, but a lot of people equated Hosehead to the Canadian insult of being a hoser. So, like, that's what that association was. Those that voted for him from other nations just said, like, Hosehead. Like, it sounds like an insult more than a name. Like, it sounds like you're making fun of his head because it's made of a hose or something. I get it. I get it. Either way, it doesn't really sound like, you know, a powerful name or a competent name or a name that, you know, you would think of as, oh, he's going to be formidable, right? We better run. We better give up our nefarious Decepticon plan. When you hear Hosehead, you kind of think the guy's going to be a little bit of a weenie. And that's not exactly the case. As a matter of fact, I did a custom Hosehead that I was, you know, that I've been very, very happy with. Maybe one day we'll get an official one. There are some official ones out there. But yeah, Hosehead took the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9 is a redeco of essentially Pipes, and it's this guy. Yeah, old Puffer. And I get it. I understand why Puffer would be on this. Not only is it kind of a weak sounding name, because some people that voted for him said that they think of clouds when you think of puff, like puffy, right? Some people said, well, what's he puffing, right? What is it that he's puffing on? Why is his name Puffer? And then some people said, look, whether you're talking huffer, whether you're talking puffer, neither of those, when used as a verb, it's used as an action, is usually a good thing. Puffer, kind of a weak name, kind of an ambiguous name, and he took the number 9 slot. Number 8, one of the greatest characters that we ever had in all of Transformers, but maybe not the greatest name, and it's this guy. Yeah, it's old Dinobot, and everybody that voted for Dinobot said the exact same thing. Why would you name one character a word that refers to an entire team of characters? Even by the time Beast Wars had started, everybody knew that the Dinobots existed, so naming one guy Dinobot seemed a little peculiar. Plus, a lot of people say, well, what was his name before? Because he literally got named Dinobot because he turns into a dinosaur, right? And while that's happened with some other ones, Cheetor, right, turns into a cheetah, Rat Trap, it does beg the question, what were their names before? Dinobot, probably the most lazy name, and this is what voters said, the most lazy name that they could have possibly come up with. All these years later, when I think Dinobot singular, I do think of Beast Wars Dinobot, but I also understand the criticism behind how he got his name and why it was applied to him. Classic character, maybe not the best name, and it took the number 8 slot. Number 7 takes us back to G1 and this classic character. Good old Cup. Now, a lot of people didn't like the name. They said, yes, we understand it is a play on the idea of a pickup truck, right? We get that. It's a play on the idea of a pickup truck. But a lot of people said, you know, it's very short. It sounds like an old tin can kind of rattling in the wind. It's just, it's not a very dynamic name. Now, I kind of defended it and said, yeah, if you're saying it's like an old tin can in the wind, because that's what you think of, like an old tin cup, that kind of matches Cup, right? Because he is an old tin cup, right? I didn't know until I was an adult that Cup was a play on pickup. Of course, that being said, as a lad, since I had the figure before season 3 ever aired, I always thought he was a car, and I was actually driving him around the wrong way. So, what is yours truly? No. Pickup took. Pickup. Pickup, see? Then I learned he was a pickup. Old Cup took the number 7 slot. Number 6 takes us back to the 1950s and the old greaser gang with this guy. Yeah, buddy, it is Big Daddy or Daddy-O. I think the more recent Siege iteration, maybe it was Earthrise, I'm not sure which line the update came out, and I think that was called Daddy-O, and I get it. I think Daddy-O was certainly name slang for your friend, for your buddy in the 1950s. Hey, anybody from the 1950s that, you know, knows better and says, yeah, no, that's not right, please point it out to me. But my understanding is that that was kind of a you know, slang for like your buddy, your pal in the 1950s. So I sort of get the name Daddy-O. Big Daddy doesn't really seem to have the same connotation. Those that voted specifically for the Big Daddy name said, sounds a little inappropriate. It sounds like, you know, he probably runs like a house of ill repute, so to speak. You know, it sounds like he might be a sugar daddy, so to speak. Either way, it didn't sound like a name for an heroic Autobot. And I tend to agree. Any way you cut it, Daddy-O or Big Daddy took the number 6 slot. And you can smell the special air up here because we are at the most coveted of locations, the halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, ironically, we do have an individual Dinobot, not the Dinobot, but one of the group of Dinobots sitting at this position, and it's this guy. That's right, it is Slug, renamed because of connotations with his original name. So let's kind of talk about both here. The character's original name was Slag, as in the actual definition of the word, which is basically stony industrial cast-off that is removed from metals during like smelting and whatnot when you're you know, trying to get the best ore possible to sell to the market. So it's like that industrial stony waste cast-off. That's what it is, industrially speaking. However, it has become a word that, according to some people, is used insultingly in certain nations, especially in the UK, as I'm led to believe. Although, speaking to some people that I know from the UK, apparently it's not that big of a deal as it's been made out to be in the rest of the world. So I really don't know. Nevertheless, fast forward many years later, and the name was changed in a lot of motifs to slug. Some people think that it's a reference to the insect, or I'm saying insect, I don't really know what a slug is, but like a slug or a snail, right? Snail without a shell. Some people think it refers to a slug like from a firearm. Some people think it refers to he's sluggish and slow. Either way, while there's a certain logic that can be applied and seen to it, the original name stuck for so long that it seems peculiar to a lot of people to rename him this way. I get the reasoning for it. However, neither word is probably a very good name, and probably never was. Explicitly so with slug, because the voters who voted for him, while there's an argument for him being like, the like powerful firearm, who wants to be associated with a slow-moving, sluggish insect? Not me, and probably not any of the Dinobots. And according to the voters, he took the number 5 slot. Now, number 4 takes us back to Beast Wars and this guy. Oh boy, Randy. I feel like the guy was doomed. It's a fine mold, and I've looked at the North American version of it, but Randy suffered from like bad GPS. He crumbled to pieces. He was saddled with a terrible name. To be fair, there were a lot of names that were translated from the Japanese names that are very peculiar and very common. Like there's a Joe, I think, and there's an Alan, and there's a Rodney. But of them all, Randy kind of stands out as a name that you don't really think of as a Transformer, right? All of those names that I just said are all Earth names, human names. You don't kind of think of it for big alien robots. I don't know. The name wasn't alien enough, and voters didn't like it, and that's why Randy took the number 4 slot. Now we enter the top 3, and at number 3 we go to the land of Micromasters, which had a lot of terrible, terrible names, to be honest with you. And whether we're talking about 6 Wing, 6 Builder, or 6 Turbo, we have one of the members that can become, well, really any part of any of those combiners. He's also got the alt mode of a very heroic fire engine. It's an indeterminate model, but he has an awful name, and it's this guy. That's right, poor old Discharge. Now, I think he was saddled with the name because it was really kind of a reference to the fact that he's a fire truck and he has a fire hose, and of course that fire hose can spray water and put out fires. Or maybe it sprays foam, I don't know. I don't know a lot about fire engines, but I assume that that's where the kind of etymology of the name comes from. However, when you think of the word discharge, it's one of those words like moist that just, it doesn't sound pleasant to the ear. Plus, when I think of it, and I assume it's the same thing for a lot of voters, though only a couple got specific, you tend to think of like a wound that maybe has become infected, or you tend to think of some sort of, like pus from a pimple, or basically some other unpleasant discharge of, I don't know, it might be old dirty oil. You get the idea. You get where I'm going with this, right? Anyway you cut it. Great little Micromaster. Fun addition to any of the 6 teams. 6 Builder, 6 Wing, any of the 6 Micromaster teams. But one of the worst names in all of Transformers. The voting proves it, and the guy took the number 3 slot. Number 2 takes us back to G1. G2, kind of an overlap there. And he's known by a couple of names. One of them is Zap, but one of them is this. Poor old Windbreaker. I mean, stick with the name Zap. It's a much cooler, much better name. And when you think of Zap, if you're anything like me, you think of pew pew, laser pistols, right? That's not what you think of with Windbreaker. According to the voters, and I agree with this, Windbreaker has one of 2 connotations. Either it's a nice light jacket that you wear in the autumn or the spring, especially if it's raining, to keep yourself dry. It's a good device. Not a great robot name, but a good device to use. Or, of course, it refers to breaking wind. Farting. It refers to farting. And that's why I took the number 2 slot. And the top one, number 1, is this guy. That's right, it's a Rector, and like I've reviewed it, I love the base. I think it's a neat little Micromaster. I think everything about him is great. He's a construction, like, vehicle thing, and like I get it, Erector as into like build a building, right? He's erecting a building. But we also know that there is another connotation that would go along with that word that many would deem kind of inappropriate if you think too deep about it. Nevertheless, this is kind of a kid's toy, and I'm not gonna lie, as a little lad, I just thought of it as like, yeah, it's a construction term for building buildings. As an adult, it's probably not the best name to apply to a Transformer. And enough fans felt the same way that easily, far and above anybody else, poor old Micromaster Erector took the number 1 slot. And there you have it. We've gone from 10 down to 1. Let's kind of touch on some of the other names, and there were a lot that could have been on this list. Some terrible, terrible names. Sky Wasp, the upcoming Sky Wasp. Alpha Bravo, Landfill, Tankor, Wreck-Gar, Lug Nuts with a Zad, Oval, who I think was a Minicon if I'm not mistaken. You know, now we're just naming them shapes. Mud Flap. Scrapnel instead of shrapnel. Heave, as in like to throw something up on top of, like, you know, something else, right? You're heaving it up. High Q, which I get it, it's a play on I, like having an IQ, but it's not a good name. Bumble Jumper, input voted for Optimus Prime himself. Shout out to Input, by the way. Who else did we have here? We also had Buffalo Dump Booster X10. Who else here? Breaker, the upcoming, not Breaker, Blanker, the upcoming Point Blank. Breaker is another one, though, the DK3 Breaker. Such a weak play on Trail Breaker, right? Ape Face, Spindle, Movor, Cheetor, Ultra Magnus, Sideburn. I thought Sideburn was one that probably would have made it. Injector, Vroom, Sprung, Baldigus, just the term Convoy. A couple of groups got votes, but since we go with individual, they didn't count. The 2 groups that got votes were the Breast Force, of course. I think it should probably have been the Chest Force, maybe. As well as the the Big Rescue Force. Like, what a lazy name. Grimlock had a vote. Laserbeak had a vote. Hotlink. Red Cog had some votes. High Jump. Beast Box. Wing Thing. Punch, Counterpunch. If we keep going here, Power Glide, Cancer, Billy. Billy, of course, being the terrible Star Dove name applied to Blaster. Omega Spream, not Supreme, Spream. Giaxis, Grindor, Sure Shock, Highwire, Rat Trap, I already mentioned. Flywheels, Decepta, Charge, Godginrai, Dirge, Allen, Wheelie, Q, Alpha Q, Sky Gary, Optimus Primal, Slapdash, GotBot, Squeaks, Breakneck, Scator, Lift Ticket, Holly, Double Cross, Emerat Zeron, Slog, which was kind of the renamed Sludge for the Age of Extinction line, Leaf, and the last one that I'll throw in there, old JP93. There you go. That's everybody. 10 down to 1. There's a whole bunch. It was a wild round of voting. And for as many wonderful names as there are, and we might do a list on those, there have also been terrible names. Let me know if your favorites made the list or not. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. Stick around, man. Have some fun with us here on the channel. And don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day, you right there, you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.